Hi, everyone. One of my favorite statements is that you have a choice between being an optimist or a pessimist. But it's stupid to be a pessimist because if you're going to be pessimistic about something, you're going to feel pessimistic. So why choose to be pessimistic in order to feel pessimistic? It doesn't make any sense to me. So if you choose to be an optimist, then you're going to feel optimistic, and that feels much better. But this last week, well, within the last few days, in fact, the partner of a friend of ours dropped dead, just like that. She was in her 40s, young and healthy, full of smiles, and yet suddenly she dropped dead. And I heard now, just a few hours ago, that an old friend of mine, he was in his 80s, he was a school friend, he was head boy at the school I was in, and I was vice head boy. So we were good friends for a long time. He also just died. He had dementia and he died. So he was over 80. Talking about optimism under those circumstances doesn't actually work for me. It's kind of like more being pessimistic around people dying around you, but being optimistic also doesn't quite work, does it? So how do we even think about it then? I realized then the power of words and how words are pointing to something. I constantly bring this up because how important it is. So to talk about being optimistic when somebody's died doesn't work. Is there another way to think about it? Well, there are other ways to think about it. You know, is the person dying or is the body dying? You know, that's one way. I mean, a lot of people think that we don't really die, not the soul of the person. Ego, yes, ego dies. Body, yes, body dies, but the soul. And then you've got to believe in the soul. In other words, you've got to believe that there's something that's left over when the body dies. And when you think that way, then it makes it certainly much easier. So people who believe in heaven and that when you die, you go to heaven. Obviously, that makes it much easier to deal with it. I'm not sure that I like the whole concept of heaven because it's just an idea that we like to hold on to. But the question of moving on, that this is a journey. I mean, the journey, something comes in and chooses a body or creates a body, and then whatever it is that has created the body, because certainly something has the body just by chance, just happening to be there, or is there some kind of underlying intelligence around it? So for me, this whole question of the words that we use, there is something called the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And it's quite interesting. It's very, very, very ancient, thousands of years old. And it describes what happens when you die. I think the Tibetans also have a Tibetan Book of the Dead, also describing the dying process or what happens after the body dies and how the soul goes through various kinds of processes. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, for example, in one phase, the heart of the person is weighed against a feather. I like that image. Heart weighed against a feather. And if the heart is not heavy and is able to be weighed equally against the feather, then the person goes on into the journey of connecting to the divine. But if the heart weighs the feather down, then there's still work to do. And the person then has to go for other processes in order before they can go on to the divine. I love the story. And these stories for me, are so rich and full. And that's why, for me, the question of dying or death of someone is a sacred process, deeply sacred. And you can feel the sacred of it when you think about it, and when you think about the person who has died. There's something there. It's not just dead body. That body was infused with something. The body was infused with the life of the person. That's the difference between a dead body and a live body. The live body is alive with something. And that something is what I believe is sacred. And when the body dies, it's just a body which before carried something beautiful, eternal, and something sacred. And it's that which is sacred moves on. And one can sense that the body is just lying there, dead. Something's gone. And what is gone has got a whisper to it, has got a song to it that moves on. And when I think of it in that kind of way, then I get in touch with something that what I call sacred. Difficult to understand and difficult to even think about, but for me, those words that I've just said make sense. That the whisper of the person that was in the body now moves on and sings another song. And that's a lovely story for me. Have a good day.